Hello, Herbal as well. I thought today we'd look at this thing, which is the Sonicake Pocket Master. So as you can see, this thing is absolutely tiny and, well, it's battery powered, which I think is really cool. So I'll just turn it on by holding the switch. It even asks, do you want to power on? So for the actual device itself, it's really basic. So we have a simple in and out over here. We have either USB power or USB interfacing, if that makes sense. So depending on if you want to connect to the USB editor, you'd use that slot there. And if you just want to power the device, you'd use this slot over here. And the device itself is just two buttons over here. And then we have this push/volume button over here. So the thing here is if I push this once, I go through the different settings on the actual device itself. And if I long press, I get to this screen where I can go to settings, I can go to metronome or drum/metronome, I think it is. And I can also select to shut down the unit. And to edit effects or to edit the signal chain, we'll go to effects. So I'll just hit the button here. And then by using these two below, I can cycle through the different effects, amp, IR, etc. that I've loaded. And then with the button above, I can scroll across to whatever effect or parameter I want to change. And then by hitting once, I can make adjustments as I see fit. To get out of all this, you just hit both of these switches together and then it goes to the initial screen or the home menu. Now just adding something I forgot here. If I hit both of these switches together, I get to the tuner mode, hit any of those switches to get out. And if I hold both of those switches together, I get to the looper mode, which I'll also demo later in this video. So I've hooked up the Sonicake to my PC and this is the software that you get with it. And it's really basic, so you can either upgrade the firmware, you'd have to download the firmware update separately or the file that you have to upload. And then under File Manage, we can do all the things relating to, say, preset management. And then we have Clone Manage, which in essence is basically like, say you take a NAM profile that you've downloaded off the internet, and then it converts it into its own tech, if you were. One important thing to note is that if you load a NAM capture, you should load a full rig capture, because if you load just the amp head, it disables the IR because there's not enough DSP on the device. So when you load NAM capture that's just the amp head, you can't load an IR, and that's not a nice experience. So when you're looking at NAM captures to load into this or transfer and translate into this device, I'd look at loading full rig captures. And then lastly, we have IR Manage as well, where I've loaded a bunch of IRs already. We're limited to a maximum amount of 5 IRs, and then in terms of clones, we're limited to 5 clones as well. I think that's fine, especially for a device of this size, that you don't really need much more than that. And you'll basically have your go-to IRs, at least these are the ones that I tend to use most of the time, that I've loaded onto the unit, and that's enough for me. So I've loaded 2 full rig captures into the device itself. Now let's see how that sounds along with some other tones. So first off, huge thanks to Sven for lending this to me. As well, I've seen videos on this and I was curious to try it out at some point, and this kind of like sped up the process, as it were. So just for comparison's sake, up till now I've been using the Nux Mighty Plug Pro, which is a really cool small device as well, so for practicing or on the go, and hooks directly into your guitar. You've got a headphone jack output there, you can stream Bluetooth and things like that. And then you can use the phone app to change your effects and settings and things like that on there. Now on the Pocket Master, it's a bit more, well, traditional, I guess, to some extent. So you've got the in and the out, so you need to bring cables with you. However, with the screen, you can do all the kind of changes to the effects and things like that on the device itself. And I think the looper is actually a really cool addition as well. So you could put this on the floor and use your foot to tap in, say, a loop that you're trying to record and play over. I did it per hand in the demo that I did, so that's why the timing is a bit kind of elongated. But I thought it worked really well in sort of having something that you can practice over that's maybe a bit more inspiring than, say, just a metronome. Now, there was a lot of talk about this device because of the NAM or support for NAM, and essentially it's not NAM as you know it. So basically those NAM files that you get, they will be converted into something that the Sonicake can use, and there is some stuff that is changed in the process. And the other thing as well is that you need to take full rig captures to use in the unit itself. And yeah, that's a nice option to have, but I sort of felt that the kind of the bass amp tones that you got out of this, and even some of the factory presets, I thought they sounded really good off the bat, especially for this price point. So this retails around the 60 euros mark, and I just think it's crazy the sort of quality of tones that we can get at those sort of price points. It's a long departure from the sort of stuff I remember from maybe 15, 20 plus years ago, where we definitely weren't getting a device of this size that's battery powered that has all those effects and tones at your disposal. I will say maybe effects wise it's somewhat lacking. Delays are all right. I tend to go for, say, the clearer sounding effects. So with delays, I'd mean, say, a digital delay or something like that, as the other ones sounded maybe a bit murky for my liking, a bit muddy. And the reverbs are all right. It's all definitely usable. There's a decent selection of drives, EQs and other things like that, should you want to use it. Again, I'm looking at this with the perspective like, well, this is like a practice tool. It's not something that I'd use for live, although maybe that is a challenge at some point. But for the practice use, using on the go, I think this is a really cool unit, especially for that price. In any case, I hope you got something out of that. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next video. Take care.